a video, yeah. Come on. Thank you. So, sorry for that. Hopefully you can see okay. If not, I will wait. I'm going to zoom into this eye so it's a bit easier to see what I'm doing. Let me just pop that back out of the way up there for a second.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Oh, we got an okay up there.
He was obviously just having a daft 5 minutes, it should be alright. Is Trish back in now?
Yeah, I'm just asked if you can see us again. I can see you, so I know it's there, but
Okay.
it doesn't say we've got anybody watching us.
Didn't even give me any warning or pop up saying I crashed. Because it's supposed to carry on streaming if it crashes automatically.
No, okay, now she's lost the stream, so let me just resend the link from where I am.
Yeah. Oh. Should have brought the tissues then with me.
They are in here, aren't they? Did I bring them yesterday? They're in the front room.
Oh, hay fever's really bad these past couple of days.
We're back.
Okay, cool. I'll just have a quick drink. So, I've gone for conical, and if we double click at any point along this line we can put in another dot. Now the one that's selected is always the biggest, and we can start to drop in other colours. So if we want to put in a hint of green we can do. If we want to, and click again, we can put in another colour. Now these lines in between actually change how the colour fades from one to the other. So you can see that's having an effect on our eye in real time. So I'm going to go there-ish. I'm going to pop another colour in there. Now let's go for something really light. And again we'll pop another one in here, and we'll go for, let's go back to those greens again. Pick a bit of green, and let's change it to slightly different saturation. And we can go to put a little bit of purple in there if we want to. And let's put in bit dark blue. So you can see we're kind of building up the detail in our eye. And if there's a section that you think is just a bit too big, you can always go in and add another hint. Okay, so just to make that eye a bit better, I'm just going to drag that centre point so it's a bit more central in our eye, otherwise it's going to look a bit weird. Okay, so there's the first layer of our eye. Now if you want to, you can duplicate that, so go Control J, and this time I'm going to go back to my fill and I'm going to go back to my elliptical, and you see it's going to go mad. That's like space eyes. So if we go back in, we can just delete any of these points just by clicking on them and just pressing backspace. So I'm going to get rid of all of them except the start and end. On the end point, I'm going to go to the dark blue. So at the moment we still have two shapes, one with our detail blend and one with just our elliptical blend. Now in our layers palette we have some cool funky things that we can do with it. So if we go to multiply, you can see we're still getting hints of that detail. Darken, we get a little bit more. We can do colour burn, linear burn, darker colour. You can even go the other way and go lighter if you want to. Now typically what I do is I'll cycle through till I find the one that does what I want it to do best. So I'm going to go for hard light for this one. So we're getting that darker edge but lighter inside. You okay? Okay. And now I'm going to draw another little circle and press and hold shift if it pays attention. There we go. And I'm just going to fill it with some black and take the stroke off.
Good job, the iPad crashed, isn't it?
Yeah, otherwise I want to know. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger, not too big, but okay. So you're always going to make it look kind of terrified if you've got this bit that's showing up here, but don't worry about that at this point. She can look terrified for a bit, it won't hurt her. So I'm going to pop in another circle, and this time I'm going to colour it white. So we're going to drag that point right down to the white. Okay, and if you were doing something cartoony, you might just leave it as that. But I want to show you this next tool. So the next one I'm going to show you is the transparency tool. Okay, and we're going to click and drag, and that does a gradient. So in the same way that the gradient tool does it with colour, the transparency tool does it with transparency. So if we click up here, we can do exactly the same things as what we did with our gradient, just it's all to do with transparency. We can reverse it. So then we can drag that back in, and we can drag that one out if we want to still have some colour left in there. And you can do this on top of a colour blend as well if you want to. You can do elliptical, radial and conical. But for this one, I'm just going to leave it as a nice simple gradient. So with eyes, going to take those, duplicate them, drag it across, and if you want to, you can just mirror the two larger sections, but you want to keep that highlight in the same place. So this is really trying to keep it nice and simple, so don't get hung up about whether it looks like a good face or not. It's just getting used to using the tools.
It still looks evil, but I'm sorry.
You think?
So I don't mind. Yeah,
Maybe put her eyes a little closer. No, that really didn't help her out there, did it?
like I said, it's not about how it looks, is it?
No, it's just getting used to working how the tools work together. So really, don't get hung up at this point about how it looks. I'm certainly not. Okay, if you want to import a picture, you can use the Place Image tool, which is the next tool down. If you want to crop a shape, you can do that too. But don't get too hung up on those just at the moment. We have lots of shape tools, so they all work in the same way as we did with the rectangle. So click and drag. Now let's go for something a bit more interesting. Now you can go through these to your heart's content, because there's lots that you can do with them. But let's go for something to play with, and we're going to go for a double star. So first of all, let's pop some colour in it, so you can see it. And rather than go straight to the node tool, if we then go back to our star tool, I did not pick a very good colour there, did I? No, I did not. Let's go kind of yellowy greeny, so you can see the two red dots. So I just click again to hide that. You have two red dots here and here, and there's another one hiding under there, believe it or not. But for now, I'll say here and here. And this one controls how you want your midpoint of your double star to act. Now each shape has different red dots depending on what it can do. So you can see it snapped, so you can go back to having it just as a normal star if you want it. It has a snap at a halfway point, and we can take it all the way to the inside if we want to. So we can kind of do the flower. So if you do that, you can see up here it changes all our variables as we're going. So you can see the point radius is changing when I do this one, and if I do this one here, you'll see that the inner radius is changing there. So if you want to take this up here, you can do. Okay. So then again, with your shapes, make sure you go convert to curves, just to make sure that the scanning cut is happy. And we can still go back, and then once we've done that convert to curves, it's all as if you drew it with a pen. So we can go around and we can click all these points. So I'm just pressing and holding shift with the corner rounder tool, and we can drag it in, and we can make petals nice and easily, and they're all perfectly accurate. Okay, and if you want to, you can change all these so they point inwards, but for now that's good enough. Okay, so we're going to duplicate that shape, and this handle at the top here rotates. So if we press and hold shift while we're rotating, we can actually lock it so that it goes to particular angles. Or if we let go, we can be a bit more controlled. So just there, and we'll give it a slightly different colour. So let's go for a lighter and maybe slightly more greeny colour. Okay, so we built our first flower, and that took what, 5 seconds? So next, let's go for a star tool. Okay, so I'm going to draw my star, and then I'm going to change my points to 3. I'm going to change my inner radius, so I'm going to do it from here rather than trying to remove those little dots down there, so that it comes in. Okay, and then when I'm happy, I'm going to go to Layer, Convert to Curves, and let's go orange, and we can drag our circle down there, and we can go back to our corner rounder tool because we've done that Convert to Curves. We're going to select our 3 outside points, and we're going to drag inwards, and it's going to round off those corners for us. Okay, so again, because we're happy, go back to Layer, Convert to Curves, set it in stone, and we can pop that in the middle, and we have our stamen. Okay, so let's say you want to draw a leaf to go with it. We can start to actually build our shapes up now. So I'm going to go through the tier tool, and I'm going to draw 1 tier. Now if you wanted to, you could leave your leaf like that if you've got a round base leaf, but I'm going to kind of make it a bit more leaf-like, and I'm going to draw another one. Now don't worry about the size of this second one because we're going to want to manipulate that a little bit. So if we go back to our arrow tool, press and hold shift, you can rotate it round, and we're going to bring it so that our widest point on our original matches our widest point on our new shape. We're going to drag it across, and we can drag this point down to where we're happy. If we click off, if you can see a bit of a double edge there, you've got 2 options. You can either move this bottom teardrop upwards, so we actually start to lose that, or you can just weld the 2 and fix it after. So I'm just going to use shift and up to make it jump up a little bit more, and that's perfect. Okay, so we have our leaf. So now what we want to do is click and drag over the top so that you select both shapes. And you can see in our layers palette we've got both turned blue. Now if we go up to here where it says about geometry, we've got all our calculations. So the ones you're mainly going to use are weld, or add in the case of Affinity. You've got your subtract, and you have your divide over here. And for the most part, that's what you're going to use. Just those 3. So if we add those together, you can see we have one leaf shape. And again, we can still change its colour. We could go back and do a gradient if we wanted to. So let's go linear. And we can move those dots, and we can make that top colour a bit lighter so it's a bit more obvious. So I'm just going to bring that round to there so you can really see a lot better. And let's deepen that dark green so we have a nice leaf. Okay. So again, we can twist it, we can place it. So now let's say you've done this and you're thinking, yeah, that's great, but now my leaf is in front of my flower, what do I need to do? You have 2 options, the easiest of which being is to use your keyboard. So if you press Control, Shift and open square bracket, it goes all the way to the back. Literally all the way to the back. So no matter what else is on the mat, it's gone straight back to the bottom. Now, as you can imagine, in most cases that's probably not what you're going to want to do. So if we hold Control and do open square bracket instead, you can see it goes down a layer at a time. Okay, so that's the difference. So Control and Shift sends it all the way to the back or all the way to the front. Control on its own goes through one layer at a time. Open square bracket says backwards, and close square bracket says forwards or upwards. Yep. So you can't have two shapes that exist on the same level. So that's the way to kind of think of it. So even if they're not occupying the same part of the mat, they're never level. And again, if you wanted to, we could go through and we can add a little bit of detail. So we could go to our pencil tool, draw that in, and at the moment it's got no stroke. So let's give it a bit of a, there we go. We can go do little ones, we can do wiggly ones. And we can even do like little areas of colour if you want to. So let's say you wanted to do some colouring that you wanted to stay just with that petal, if that makes sense. So let's go to our brush tool. We're going to zoom back in and let's go for something a bit different than watercolours. Let's go for let's go for some markers. Okay. If we use our open square bracket, we can reduce the size of our brush without having to go and do that manually. So at the moment, bear in mind, because I've got my icons on huge, this won't be necessarily replica of what is currently selected for my brush size, but normally on your screen that circle reflects the same size as your brush. Let's go for, I want something that's more sprays. Let's try inks and see if there's something in there. Okay, let's try acrylic. No. It's getting quite bold. Again, no. Let's go for that one. Come back here. There we go. Just because I have a graphics tablet, I'm just going to set it so that I can do pressure on it. And we can do some little bits of colour that are going to apply just to this petal. So if you've got a little bit of shading you want to do, okay. So with those strokes, I'm just going to select them here in the palette. So that's Shift and hold, and then click on either the layer above or below that you want to group. Okay, I'm just going to do that as a group. Then I'm just going to take these other ones out so they're out of the way so you can see what I'm doing a bit better then. So if I click and grab this group, I'm just going to bring it so it's going to slot into our petals. So you can see it goes to a little blue line that's going up and down, so vertically, down the side of our flower. And if we click and drag that, we can see that we can actually crop our brush marks. So this has changed a bit recently, so when we did our last one, it worked slightly differently. So if you want to use a shape to crop, you can do. So what I will do is just duplicate that so we can watch that again. So if I drop that in there, you can see it's a crop. We can change the colour so you can see it again to, let's go to an orange here. And you can see it's cropped those lines. So you don't have to worry about going outside the colour in your lines again. Okay, I'm just going to step back a little bit. Text. Now there's one that we haven't covered yet. So text is the really easy one. So as usual, just type, and it works exactly the same as if you are in Word or anything else. You can change your font, you have all your usual controls, you have your alignment, and for the most part it's exactly the same as what you'd expect it to be. However, if you want to, we can start to actually put text on a path. So what you want to do is draw your path first, go to your text tool, and then if you hover over the top, you'll see you come to a T with a little wiggle. So if we then click, you can see it's put our cursor on our path, and then we can type. So we can go Merry Christmas, and let's choose a nice font to do it in, shall we? Okay, and we'll go bigger. So if I go like that, then we can start to talk about some of the issues that you might have.
Can you do like you do in Canvas, so the text that you'd already typed, could you then drag that to the path?
No,
So it
no,
has to do that.
you have to draw the path first, and then so as usual, if you have any sort of bowl shape in a path, you'll start to have issues with your text. Okay, so what you can do is you can use your path tool, as in your node tool, you can start to edit it, and it will alter on the fly. Actually, that looks quite nice like that. Get distracted now, that's not good. Okay, and you can still do things like with your baseline and things. So we can go and lift it up, but in this case, because we've got that bowl shape, what you're going to want to do is start to bring it down, and that can fix a few issues too. So that's just your baseline. And you can even send it upside down should you need to. So if I draw a shape, for instance, let's go for a circle. There we go. Let's go Merry Christmas. I'm just going to set it to a font. Let's go for that one. Let's set it to a size. Don't want to go too big. That one. Okay. And I'm going to go copy that. And let's put in a little bullet point. So on the Mac, that's Alt and 8. don't know if that's the same on a PC, and I can just go and pop that round, and you can see it does this weird thing where it's going to pop back up here. Okay, so you can see straight away that's a little bit weird, so I'm going to zoom back in just so you can see that on its own. Oh.
Why did it move the one?
And it's all about start end points. So you can see it comes around here and then goes around there like it's another line of text rather than doing it all as one, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to show you exactly how it does work. It's very, very weird. And if we go and to our text, so we're just going to go to our text tool, you can see we've got these green line mild triangles and the red triangles, and that's our kind of start and finish points, so we can actually use those to manipulate what it's seeing. So if we do this one, you can see that changes our start point for our second half, so we can go like that, and it's put that one inside rather than on top. So if we get these two going in the same place, you can see exactly what it's playing at. So ideally what you want to do is, if we get the correct endpoint, you can take it back around there and it should ping if we can get the correct one. There we go. Right, there. And if anything's a bit weird, there we go. Oh. So there you are, we're all in the same direction then, and it sorts itself out, so it'll ignore those other two and get rid. So then baseline, we can shift that outwards and hopefully make way for another little bullet point in there. I'm just going to shrink that down slightly, so if we select all our text so that we can see it in blue, you can see that it's gonna, let's go for 22, might do it. Oh, too far. 23, that's a bit better. So if we click at the end, we can go space, put another bullet in, and then from here we can kind of cheat a little bit and we can go, let's try 0.5, there we go. Don't be afraid to use points when it comes to your text as well. So again, if you want to, you can reverse it round, so don't feel like you have to stand on your head. So put it the right way at the top. So again, as I was saying, reverse is often the most useful function that there is, because you can reverse a gradient, so you'll see that there's the same icon in there too when we go into gradient. You can reverse the path and you can reverse the text. So if ever anything is wrong, try reversing it and usually will get you back out of it. So from there we have our eyedropper, which only picks up colour really. It's not like, if you have a program like Illustrator for instance, it will often pick up the font and all the rest of it. The eyedropper doesn't work like that in Affinity, so you do need to do duplicate to get styles and things. You have your hand tool, that's going to move around your map without your hand to press the space bar. Okay, so it's just moving the map, it's not moving anything on the map. You have your magnifying glass, and that's fairly obvious. So far we've kind of done a bit of drawing, we've done a bit of text, we've put that text on the path. So how advanced would you like me to get? Because from here we can get really, really advanced, or we can do a project. Which way would help you to learn better? The choice is yours. There's whole 2 personas we haven't touched upon yet, but for beginners I try and stay away from them.
What's the other one?
Export. For doing slices and things, so it's not really relevant as a beginner. But Pixel can be fun. It all depends on how you want to use Affinity. So if you want to use Affinity to cut files, then you want to just stay in your vector persona, so that's this one. Okay. If you want to start getting into print and cut or dice illumination, then you're going to want to get into the Pixel one. So Pixel's useful for anything that you want to print. So if you want to do proper watercolour effects rather than the ones that the vector brush can do.
Either is fine, she said.
Okay. So in which case then?
It is up to you, Trish. It's your time. So.
Yeah, it's your time. make use of me as you will. About what, halfway through? If we're not going till...
It's going till 12, isn't it? It's 9 till 12, isn't it? It's 3 hours.
So what should we go for?
An hour and 5 minutes left. Maybe a little bit longer because we had cut files would be great for now. So.
Okay. Okay, so I will stick to cut files. So what I will do is I'll save that just in case you want it as a reference at some point, rather than just deleting it. So I will put Trish lesson. There we go. And close that. So if we go back to file and new.
Do you want to go into
presets?
Presets and stuff.
Okay, so I have a number of presets set up, one of which is the scan and cut active area. So what I'll do is I'll go through that and then teach you how to create your own. So I've literally got it set up according to the active area according to the machine, which is 11.65 inches width-wise and 11.73 inches height-wise. Okay. So you'll see that my usual one is set up to millimeters, but I can set one up in inches as well. The DPI is 96. So that means that when we export to SVG and we have the correct settings for exporting, which is something I'll cover in a bit, then it will come out the right size when we take it into Canvas or straight to the machine. So it's quite important, that one. So definitely make a note of 96. You'll want to come back to it time again. The colour for cut files doesn't matter, because at the end of the day it's going to cut, it's never going to colour anything. Margins you don't need to, because we've kind of automatically done that by doing this section here. Don't be tempted to do a 12x12 sheet and then use margins to get it down to those figures. It won't work and it will cause your document to shrink. Bleed for cut files again doesn't matter. Okay. And then when you're happy, you can just click a little plus on your where it says custom, and if we scroll down, you can see it comes up at the bottom. If you right click on it, you can go to rename, and just to avoid confusion, I'm going to put scan and cut active area 12 by 12, and then inches. Okay, so you can see that it comes up as a new template. And when you're happy, you can click back on that template so it comes up here and it's named. It's a good idea to just check it through that it doesn't do anything weird, and we can go create. Okay, so think of this as your 12 by 12 mat, but with that little dotted area that canvas has. The idea being that if you do use artboards, it should go in there and fit. Now there's a couple of exceptions on that, but I will come to that when we come to export.
You should be able to watch it, Trish. It'll be left up in this group, but it'll
indefinitely.
be in this group indefinitely, so you can watch it back as much as you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Same for Zena's tutorial later as well, so you'll be able to see that. That's going to be on iPad, but everything that I do on here, you can do on the iPad and vice versa. Okay. It just means that the buttons will be in different places. So, if we come in, and I'm going to do a little box, and I'm not going to make it too fancy. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate that square. So all I did was just press and hold Alt, click and drag, and that gives me a duplicate too, so you don't have to press the Ctrl and J if you don't want to. And I'm going to shrink this box so it's slightly smaller, and I'll pop that down there for now. Okay, I'm going to draw another rectangle, and this is going to be the sides of the lid of my box. Okay, I can press and hold that shift to rotate it to the 90 degrees. I can duplicate it because it doesn't have to rotate round correctly, so that we've got our net for our box. Okay, and I'm going to go in here, and I always use my trapezoid tool for doing my glue tabs, so I can just do that, take it to the edge, and again I can duplicate it, rotate it, and stick it in place. Be sure to let us know, Trish, if you want us to check out the interface that you've got as well, so that we can make sure it's working for you. Okay, so I have a box that has glue tabs, and it's nice and simple on this one to just have it kind of go around and keep the strength in the lid that way. So then, if we zoom in, we can go to world. Look at that, perfect first time. Now that won't usually happen. I would love to say that it's always like that, honest. But sometimes you will find that it does put in extra lines and things, and you can just patch those up. So I'm going to go back to my square tool. I'm going to go point to point, and we can use our dash stroke, and this time we're going to change the second number, which is the gap in between, and make that so it's 6, so we can see that we've got a score line. And we can do the same with our pen tool, so if we go here, you'll see it snaps to a point down there, press V, click off, P for pen, V, click off, P for pen. So you just go and click, click, V, click, P, click, click, V, click, and then we have our score lines. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do the same from my sides. me move that up a little bit so I have a bit of room to play. And back to my rectangle tool. Now be aware that it is going to now have that stroke selected, so I'm just going to turn that off for a minute. Okay, and just to make your life a little bit easier at this point, make sure that it's really obvious which side your box is oriented. So, okay, so Alt and drag, Shift, rotate, position. Okay, Alt and drag, let go, and it will do your guides for you. Alt and drag, let go of the Alt, and let it do the guides. So far so good. So now if I select those and weld, we have the start of our net, and then we need to put our glue tabs in. So I'm going to go for one there. I'm going to drag it over here, one down here, and you're going to flip it vertically this time. So it's good to have you learning to do different buttons as you're doing this. Okay, and if it won't snap just at the moment, that's okay. There we go. Sorted. So hopefully you've got those, and we can do another click and drag. Careful not to pull in your dash line from up here, and we can weld. And see, look, it's doing so well, wasn't it? I was hoping it was going to go wrong actually, so I can show you how to fix it. So if it does do this, chances are it's not that you've done something wrong, it's just a glitch in the software. So if you just do a rectangle over the top and select shape and weld, you can see that you're going to get these two little lines here. Just click on the nodes just there, so that you've got a nice whole background. We're going to go back to our square tool. We're going to go back to our stroke, and if we go back to our dash, you can see it's pulled up our last figures. Okay, and then I'm going to go and do our score lines for our glue tabs. So exactly the same process. P, click, click, V, click, and just pressing and holding spacebar and dragging the mat, so that turns to the same as using our hand tool over here. It's just a bit easier. So click, click, V, click, P, click, click, V, click, and then we have a box. Okay, so nice and easy, nothing fancy. And we have a lid and a box bottom. So now you're going to want to do something to decorate the top of your box. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring in symbol for you. Okay, excuse that. So, yeah, with symbols I find it easiest to create them kind of upwards, if that makes sense. So if I do this, you can see what I mean. So upwards. And I'm going to pop in a fill, even though it makes no difference to the machine whatsoever, but it's going to make life a bit easier for you to see what's going on. So there's our first shape. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to shrink it down. Now if we do this, we can see we've got a lovely curve that's a bit thinner here and a bit thicker here. So let's say you want to do an offset instead, and you're wondering how do you do it. So in Affinity it doesn't have an offset command yet. So what you need to do is you need to do it through your stroke. So you're going to change it so it's a straight flat stroke, and
Put your teeth back in.
put your teeth back in. And basically the width of this stroke is going to be your, or half of your offset, because we've got this central line here. So I'm going to say I'm going to want it to be, let's say 6mm, because I want 3mm border. Okay, so you can see straight away that we have this here is what's going to be left by the time we're finished. Okay, we can click off that. Now go to Layer, Expand Stroke. So that takes that stroke and turns it into a shape. So if you wanted to just keep that as it is and use it as a shape on its own, you could do, and you could send it and it would cut around both sides. But what I want it to do is I actually want to punch the hole from the centre of here through our petal. So the easiest way to do that is if we go to our node tool, so A, we're going to delete our nodes from the outside. Now once you've started doing this, don't panic thinking you're doing it wrong. You're doing it perfectly fine. So you can see then we end up with our centre shape. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Move. I'm going to select both that inner petal and the outer petal, and we're going to go to Subtract. Okay, so now you can see that we have a hole in the middle of our petal. Okay, I'm going to go back to Node, and I want to work on these two bottom nodes down here with the corner rounder tool. So we're going to bring those upwards. Okay, so because we've done it this way around, we're going to end up with a stronger inside than if we had done that before we just did all the subtraction and things like that. Okay, so leave that one to last. And again we can go back to Layer and convert to curves to just set that in stone. Okay, so we've got one petal, but what about the fact that we want to have more than one petal without having to stick all of these things together, and we want them to be identical? This is where our symbols palette comes in. So if I drag that in, so you can get to that the same way as you get to all your other palettes, so View, Studio, and then Symbols. And we're going to press Create so that our petal that we have selected becomes a symbol. Okay. Think of this as a really easy way to have a clipboard with multiple items, and you can take as many copies from that as you want, and we can work with it the same way. So you can twist it round, and we can drag in another one, and we can twist that round a bit more, and we can drag in another one and twist that one round a bit more if we wanted to. But rather than do that, we're going to concentrate just on these first three. Okay, so we have 3 copies of the symbol here, and we can position those how we want to. So let's go for about there. And I'm just going to use this guide, gap here as a guide for this gap here, so that I know that when I come to do the next piece it should be pretty close. Okay, so then what we can do is we can select those 3 symbols and press, come on, those 3 symbols, and if we press Control and G on a PC, it's Command and G for me on the Mac, we can group them and we can create a new symbol. So if we go in our symbol here, we can see we've still got a link to our 3 symbols. And what I love about symbols is, let's say we go into our bottom one, and let's say we want to do something a little bit funky. So I'm going to pop in an oval, and you can see straight away it copies across all 3 symbols, which in turn copies back to this symbol, and then so on and so forth. So no matter how many times we put this symbol on the map, it always goes back to our original symbol and it links, which is absolutely fantastic. So it's a really easy way of being able to alter your petal. So if I delete that back out for a minute. So I'll even show you on this original shape. We can just drag that in, and we have a petal that automatically changes across to all of them. So how easy does that make things? So I'm going to drag in another couple of instances of this same symbol. And I'm rotating rather than flipping for this one. It's kind of important, because if you flip, then obviously if you do make any changes, they'll be flipped rather than rotated. So if you do get lazy and do just the odd one that's flipped, then it will show. Okay, I can just nudge those, and again you can use those gaps to see where things may not necessarily be quite in the right place. And so we have our nice flower. Okay, so at this point, if you're happy, you can select it all, and if you go to detach, you'll see it changes all to groups, even the ones that are down here. So then what you need to do is Control Shift and G until you can't see groups anymore. Okay, so that means that we're back to those all being individual shapes, and if you make a change to one, it's just going to stay in that one. But what it does enable you to do then is we can weld it all together. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm going to bring this up to our box, and you can see at the moment it's a bit big, so I'm just going to bring that down just a little. Also, you don't want to take it too fine at this point, so about there will be okay, and it can overhang our box. So I'm just going to bring this back down here. I'm just going to zoom in because I've noticed something has gone a bit mad down here, but we can fix that, so don't panic. Everything is fixable. So we can see this bit here is right, but something's gone way bad down here. So just want to try and get to the right bit of the node. So if we zoom in, you can see it's gone a bit, and I'm just going to drag that up there, and it should go there. And if you want to just make life a little easier, we can just take that out, and we can alter this bit here. There we go. Fixed. Just going to click off that for a second. I'm going to go to a circle and drag that in, and let's get rid of that stroke for now. We don't need it on this one. So I'm just going to bring that into the centre of our flower, and then if we hold Alt and Shift, Command and Shift, sorry, so Control and Shift on a PC, it resizes from that centre outwards. So then we can bring that like so. If you want to, you can take it all the way out so that you can cover up that centre bit, but I want to kind of keep some of that in, so I'm just going to resize that down to there. Then I'm going to weld that to our original. so we have a little bit of detail. Now bear in mind, at the size that's going to cut, it's going to be more like cutting little slits. Okay. So one thing to always bear in mind is how that's going to eventually cut. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to take out all these nodes from the inside just so I can just have that outside, and then we can have a shape that we can back it onto then. So if we go through and just do this, we can just select the nodes. As long as you don't select any of the ones in the outside, you'll be fine. I can take out all these inside ones, nice and easy. You just want to make sure that you don't move any on the outside at all. So see how that would have selected that outside one. You want to avoid that. And then of course there's always the undo button if you do make a mistake.
Most important button there.
Oh yeah. There's also a history palette in Affinity. So if you need to do multiple undos, sometimes that's the easiest way to do it. Okay. So if I zoom out, and I'll give that a different colour so you can see what I'm thinking. So let's make that yellow, and I'm going to send it behind this one, and then we can pop it behind so you can see what it's going to do. So think of it as a way of strengthening your cut file. So if you're cutting something and you know it's going to be delicate, you can just back it with something else to kind of fill in the gaps and make it a little bit stronger. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so any questions so far?
Anything particular you want to see us cover?
I might just spend a bit more time on offsetting, just so, because I know it's complicated in Affinity. So what I will do is I will save that so that you can have access to that file as well. So Trish,
I think offset is one of the more confusing things to do, isn't it? On that?
Yeah.
You don't have
It doesn't say
not
offset.
easy to do, is it?
No. It doesn't say offset, so you kind of, it's a workaround. And I'm sure that when they update it, offset will be certainly on their list of things to do, because it drives everybody up the wall the way that we have to do it. I'm just checking because it didn't update recently. No, still haven't brought it out. Come on, people.
Trish says she hasn't got any questions at the moment. It's all good, thanks.
Okay. So what I would say, Trish, is when you're starting to play with this, you'll undoubtedly have questions. So if you do have any questions, all you've got to do is just get back in touch with us, and we can either do it like this in this group. So for instance, when we've done workshops with Carol and things, we've gone back and restreamed extra sections when she's asked questions or needed extra
Will
help.
that save to an SVG?
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you want to show saving to SVG in the...
Okay, I'll do it with that one that I've just done, so
Yeah.
it's nice and easy then.
I was thinking you've got that.
Yeah, while it's all up there. Okay, so let's put some text on here as well. So I've got some text, so I can talk about that too. So Let's go for boring old love.
God, nothing boring about that.
And
That's okay, it's because there's a delay our end as well, so it takes 30 seconds to come through and then...
yeah, so in actual fact there's probably about a minute where between us answering questions and things.
You've all been pinging up, so don't worry.
So I'm just going to make this bigger.
No need to apologise.
None at all. Okay, so we've got our love here. And if we were going to cut that as is, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but if we're going to cut that as is, then one of the most important things to do before you export to SVG is go to Layer, Convert to Curves. Okay. If you do nothing else, just make sure you do that, because you can always weld it in Canvas if you've forgotten to, but the one thing you can't do is get it to see text properly if you haven't done that step. So it's the same if you're sending a file to somebody else as well. If you've just left that text and they haven't got the font at the other end, they can't do it properly either. So just always remember to convert to curves. Okay. And I always say weld it. Okay. Now if you get this happen here, that's okay. You're going to go divide, and then we're going to go subtract, but you want to subtract only those that are over top of each other. So the L, then we've got the E and that centre of the E there, so you want to subtract that, and the O and subtract that, and then hopefully when you go back to weld it again, it should weld properly. There you go. And that's just down to the font not necessarily being correct in the first place. Okay. So don't think it's something you've done wrong. It's something the original designer did wrong. Okay. And obviously if you're then going to do things like I'd be tempted to put like a little joining strip in there. I'd take the L up to the O so that it merged, and then do like a layer to go underneath. You'll have already done that convert to curves anyway. But if for any reason you're not doing that step, it can be ever so easy to forget to do it. And then get, oh, I know what I've done wrong. But I always say, make sure you save a designer file as well, so you can always come back, especially if you've made a typo. So if we go to export, okay, you'll see that it comes up with a long list of different file types. You're going to click on the one that you want, so I'm going to go to SVG. Okay, and straight away you can see I've got a scan and cut preset, and that's something you need to do for yourself. So if we go into more, okay, we can see straight away that we've got lots of different things that are already set up. So if I go into scan and cut, I've got it set up for SVG, rasterize nothing, use DPI 96. So even if I forget to set the DPI correctly in the document, it's still going to export it at 96. It can have a bit of an effect on the size, but at least it kind of does a little bit of a catch for me. When it comes to allow JPEG compression, what that means is SVGs can contain both vectors and images, just to add to the confusion. So if you have an SVG and it's not cutting correctly or coming up on your scan and cut, typically it's because it's got an image in there instead of a path. So that's what that's referring to. Now, to be honest, because we've got this rasterize nothing here, it totally ignores whatever you put in here. Okay, you could put quality 0, wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference so long as you've got this nothing up here. Okay. The next button is export text as curves. So even if you forget to do it, so long as you have that as part of your scan and cut thing, it will catch you. But best practice is to do it in the software rather than relying on it to do it on export. Longer text spans I tend to ignore because, again, it should be exporting the text as curves anyway. Use relative coordinates, so make sure that one is ticked. And the really important one, the really important one, is set view box. Okay, so when we're working in Affinity on desktop, you want to make sure that that set view box is off. It defaults to on. So the difference being, bizarrely, Canvas Online doesn't care, but Canvas Desktop does. So what it will do is it actually takes your document and shrinks it and makes it tiny. So by unticking that box, we're making sure that it's coming into Canvas Desktop at the right size, so we haven't then got to resize and check and all the rest of it. So just make sure that one is unticked. Add line breaks is typically defaulted to on, so just leave that. It's to do with the program behind the scenes that you never see. And include bleed isn't needed because we are just literally using it as a cutting file. So you're probably going to want to write all of these down just so that you can create your own, or if you have Affinity in front of you, go in and quickly pop those up into your more. And at that point you could go to close if you want to and just carry on. But if you want to create a preset, just press on manage presets, and if it's not already a preset, which mine is, this button here, create preset, will be black, and you can then press it and create your own, and you can then rename it to Scan and Cut. Okay, so just let me know you've managed to write those all down, because I know it's a bit on the fly, or do it directly in the software.
You can just come back and do it again. Like I said, it doesn't get deleted the video, we just leave it there. So.
Okay, so when you're happy that your presets are correct, you can click close. Next bit, export whole document. So what that means is if you've got multiple artboards, it's going to put it all in one document, which you wouldn't want to do necessarily. So if when you have multiple artboards, you click here, so that it does the drop down, it'll actually have all your artboards individually listed, so you can just do one at a time, which is what you would do for SVG anyway. You won't want to put all documents, because otherwise, if you do it so that it says whole document and puts it all into one SVG, all it's going to do when it gets into Canvas is shrink it all up so it fits on your 12 by 12 mat. So if you imagine that you've got like 13 12 by 12s and it's put it in all in the whole document, it's going to take those 13 12 by 12s and shrink them right down.
Yeah, she's taking a picture of it. So
okay. And finally, if you tick this one, which is don't export layers hidden by export persona, that means anything that's hidden won't get sent across. So I'm just going to go back to my Scan and Cut settings. And finally, we can do the nice easy bit of just export. And if we just pop that in there. I just realised where that's saving to. That's so the wrong folder, but I'll retrieve it.
where are you saving it?
Leslie's folder.
Oh, I got it in there.
No. Going sneaky peeks now. That's not good. Okay, so that's how we export for Scan and Cut. So I'm just going to go back over the offset and the calculations. So I might try and do a bit of a sheet on this one actually. So first of all, we're going to go into stroke, put a straight stroke on, and let's give it an actual definitive size, so 6mm, and leave it central. Okay, I'm going to just shrink that up slightly. I'm going to duplicate it across. Okay, just so you can see as I'm working across. So I'm going to convert that to curves. Oh, not convert to curves. Oh, come on, brain. Expand stroke. Oh dear. So we've got our two shapes. Okay. Then I'm going to go and subtract. And I'm going to put some text there that says offset inwards using subtract. Okay. So then I'm going to bring that same box down so we still know. Let's just pop a bit more notes in that actually. 6mm border for 3mm offset. So again, I'm going to duplicate my shape of my 6mm border. I'm going to go to layer, expand stroke, so that we've got our two shapes. I'm going to duplicate that again. And this time you're going to see that we have rounded corners because we have a rounded, excuse that, because we have the rounded corners on our stroke. So I'll change this one. So we have offset outwards using weld, 6mm border for a 3mm offset with rounded corners. So if we were to do the same process, so press Alt again, and this time we're going to go to our stroke and we're going to give it straight corners. And I'm going to duplicate it again, go to layer, expand stroke, and duplicate that again. This time if I go to weld, you can see we've now got sharp points because we've changed our stroke from being rounded corners to being a miter join. Okay. So I'll put that in there. So you can see all the different effects you can achieve just from slightly changing one variable. And again, it won't make any difference on your inside shape here what corner you choose. It only changes on the outside. So this time I'm going to duplicate it again. And if we go to the bevel, you can see we've got our 45 here. We can duplicate that across, expand stroke, duplicate that again, and we can go weld, and you can see that we have our bevel corners. So I can duplicate that text again. So that's the main ways that you would do an offset. So you're either going to go inwards using subtract, and it doesn't matter what corner you use, or you can go outwards and you choose your corners the same way as what you would in canvas. Okay. So I'm just going to move those out a little bit so you can see a bit clearer. In actual fact, I might even pop a bit of a stronger colour. So they're quite subtle at the minute, so we can just change that to a nice bright red. So that's your offset really. And if we go into our artboard, I'm going to go to insert artboard. So the first artboard it will always insert is the main page. I'm going to insert another one. So now I'm going to draw some shapes. So let's go for a circle, a square, and a triangle. And I'm going to give them different colours just to make it a bit easier to see straight away what's going on. So let's make that nice sunny yellow. Okay, and I'm going to do it so that they're kind of overlapping, but hopefully you should be able to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate these a few times. Okay, so I'll leave the original as is. So if I put text of 3 shapes, nice and boring, there's 3 shapes there. And if we select our next group and we go to weld, you can see that it welds it into one shape. And I'll even put that we've welded that. Okay. With the next one, I'm going to go to subtract. So again, you'll get left with one shape, so it takes those shapes from the top away from the bottommost shape, and you'll only ever be left with one shape. So, don't grab hold of the artboard by mistake. So next we have our kind of, this one's a bit of a tricky one to kind of show, so let's see if I can get these a bit more overlapped. I'm just going to take one out of the mix. So if I pop that there and duplicate it across so you can see a bit better, and that's going to leave you with one shape in the middle. So if I just copy that, and it's what does it call it in here? Intersect, yeah. So basically, as you move through the different software, they all do the same thing, but they all call it something different. So I'll try and stick to the same terminology. I'll try. So next one we have this is our fun one. So you can see it gives you one curve, even though it looks like it's 3 distinct shapes. Okay, and it pops out whatever's overlapping. So if I drag that over another shape, you can see it's holes. So even though it looks like it's 3 shapes, it's still one shape until you break it apart. And that one in here is known as, come on, give me my tooltip.
Guess.
Yeah. It's because it's right underneath the arrow. So it calls it XOR, which is really an odd way of putting it. But if you think of it instead of being, it's not really a crop tool, it's like the opposite of, if that makes sense. So your intersect is more like your crop, and it's more like punching an aperture through the middle. Okay. And finally, we have divide. Now divide actually gives us, you're going to love this one, you end up with lots more shapes. So if I put divide, and we have 1, 2, 3, then it's going to skip it because it's put it somewhere else to get the different layers. It is really a bizarre tool to try and explain. So you've got 1, 2, 3 is this shape in here, 4, 5 for this shape here, and then 6 goes around like this and up there. So 6 shapes. So then if I come back in here, I can actually drag these out so you can see a bit better what's going on. So divide is useful for doing things like your text. If it goes wrong, you'll have seen that I used it then. But also if you are trying to change colours for things that maybe wrap around behind something, and so on and so forth, so that you can get it looking right. So for instance, if you had a flower and you want part of it in front of the square and part of it behind it, you can use divide and then recolour it so that your square appears to pop in the middle. So what I will do very quickly is show you what I mean. So I'm going to go back to artboard and insert artboard, and let's draw a cloud, a fluffy little cloud.
I'm going to draw a cat.
No, there's my fluffy little cloud. I'm going to turn it into a flower because I'm going to reduce the number of petals. Okay, radius can come like so. So if I do a square, and let's give that a different colour, so I can make that red. And let's take these strokes off it so it's not quite so in your face. Okay, so there's our flower, and there's our square. Okay, so I might go, okay, I want 1/2 of that to be, that flower to be in front, and 1/2 to be behind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my rectangle. I'm going to take half of it so it goes to that halfway point. I can join it up, and I'm going to bring it in. Okay, so those two squares are butting up to one another at the moment. I'm going to select all of it, and I'm going to go to divide, and it's going to crash. Ah! Designer, I'm not impressed with you. Please do open the recovery file and restore. Thank you. Let's try that again, shall we?
Want to save that before it...
Yes, I will do.
One thing we've learned, save frequently. I know.
Yeah.
Well, you should learn by now.
Yeah. Is that a doof doof? Okay, so let's take that off there and get rid of this stroke. There we go. So let me draw my square again. Where's my colour gone? Where's where it's hiding? Come here. Let's pop it back down there. Okay. Just going to go back to my wheel just to make it a bit easier. And I'm going to go to red. Okay. Now, do we think this is going to behave again this time, or do we think it's going to misbehave? Trying to work out whether those two are actually overlapping or whether it's just my monitor. Okay, so I'm going to divide. There you go. So you can see that then we end up with a flower that is yellow and half of it. We end up with 2 red squares and 2 red petals. So I'm going to say I want that one to be
Sorry.
that colour. Okay, and I'm going to leave the other one behind. Okay, so then what we can do is we can highlight our 3 pieces and we can weld them together. And again, if it does do this, just ignore it and we'll sort it out after. And we'll weld those 2 together. So you can see, then it looks like we have a flower that goes through our piece, even though it actually doesn't. It's all about optical illusion. There we go. So I take that out there. You can see we've still got something going on here. So if we zoom in, you see we've got a node that just needs to go away. Just going to delete that one out. And there, sorted. And this one can come back in there, and we know it's correct and in the right place. There you go. So we have a flower that is slotted between an object. Now that could be a ring that you want to do in a logo that's got a slot behind something else. Or it could be that, you know, that you want to wrap a ribbon around a bottle or something. There's lots of times when you kind of need that look of that wrapping. So it's a good one to practice that one. So I'll save that before it goes too far. And then you can have this sheet to refer back to. Oh, I can see what it hasn't done. It didn't remember that bit, did it? So divide that and just pop out these shapes here so you can see those. Divide 6 shapes and save. Okay, any last questions before we leave it for today? What I would advise is that you go away and you play this afternoon, and we'll be back in the group anyway. Teaching won't be from about 3.
Yes, 3 o'clock.
So if it's before 3, we can probably hop back on live and do it then. If it's after 3, Ian might be able to do some answers.
It depends, doesn't it? Because if I'm concentrating on, like I have with Trish, because I like to give her the
you get 100% of Ian's attention. Except for when people call.
Yeah, tell you what. She's doing another skip run, wants to know what she could tell you about what I told you yesterday. So.
Why? What have you skipped?
And just some bits of rubbish that we found, uniform and stuff, and other bits.
All right. Okay.
I'll find the London picture.
You skipped that, have you?
Got mouldy on the back.
Ooh.
Trisha, so pleased with what you've shown me now. Can't wait to play.
Yeah, so start with something simple like doing the flower symbols. So, and then go from there.
So if you do have any questions or get stuck, we're always around, so as you know, always here to...
I'll save that too.
Aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Always here to help, as they say.
Okay, so we're going to have some lunch and I'll pop these up while you're doing lunch if you want. Crumpets? Oh, go on then.
What program were you using, Trish? Because I realised how limited the program I was using was.
Canvas.
Well,
Canvas is limited.
Canvas was.
Canvas is a pain in the
Jesus, please don't set me up.
Okay. What you'll find is that I'll do like little challenges in the group, isn't it? So. That reminds me, I haven't set any for Carol and Sarah Lou to do, or Tracy in the last one recently.
No.
I tried to make sure you're practicing.
Do you want to Tracy and Sarah your question yesterday?
No, I haven't yet. If you want to do that in a bit. Okay.
So thank you both so much for your patience and the fabulous cursor.
It's huge. Makes brushes interesting because usually like your brush is the same size as your cursor, so it's like I'm gonna guess where I'm clicking today. But yes, you can get really advanced with Affinity and hop into the start of Zena's stream and you'll see that I've got some bits that you can actually see that I've kind of completed, and you'll go, you can do that in Affinity. It's like, yeah, because I've done some like watercolour painting in Affinity using the pixel function on the tablet.
Greeting card factory she used to use.
Oh, cool, blimey. That's going back some. I think I had a copy of that back on my...
It worked, but so limited. There you go. Yes, I mean, designer is amazing compared to what...
Yeah. Yeah, see, I think designer's a good halfway house, so it's not got the expensive Illustrator. Okay, it's not got all the functions of Illustrator, but when you're paying once for Affinity what you're paying monthly for Illustrator, it's a bit daft.
Have a lovely lunch and thank you so much.
That's okay. So I'll pop these up in a minute, and as soon as Ian's done the end stream and...
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Okay,
Bye.
bye!